Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Wednesday morning, December the 22nd. I'm happy to be here. This is One Shot to Be a Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I did pop the link into the chat room there that I wanted to look at this morning. And the sound was terrible yesterday on the show, so I sort of lost the last, 6-7 minutes of the show. So I don't know what happened there, but it was kind of strange. I think Blog Talk Radio was having some problems because they actually had posted a little message on the switchboard saying, if there was trouble to dial this other number, but it was already too late in the show, so I just thought, just end the show. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist. I don't hold any certificates in those areas. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows, as I always say, and it's very important that people know this. I'm a survivor myself, and I just want to be one more voice out here, really, just to help people to sort of see that they're not alone and that there is, there is help out there. I see lots and lots of good information out there, especially for myself, for self-help. But if you can't do self-help, and it's not working, make sure you reach out, because I've talked to a lot of really awesome counselors and therapists and whatnot, and psychotherapists and whatnot who, they're out there to help people, right? So there are good people out there, and I just want to be one more voice of encouragement for people, and really, just to be another voice speaking out against abuse and talking about this stuff, because it's never going to change unless we talk about it. And so, as a society, as a whole, right? So that's why I'm doing these shows. So thanks, everybody, for being here. And you have to listen to your, to all my shows at your own discretion, because all of my shows are sensitive. I'm covering the topic of abuse, and abuse is very sensitive. I know it shocks a lot of people, especially if you haven't heard too much about abuse, and heard too many people talking about it. It can be very stressful. It's a stressful topic for most people, and that's understandable. It's very hard on people, and especially those who have survived it, right? And so if you're a survivor, you have to be very careful what you're listening to, and you have to know, what might trigger you. And if you feel that the show is any of my shows would make you uncomfortable, please don't listen to the show, right? You have to be at a safe place, a very comfortable place, and in your healing journey, you might want to have somebody with you if you're going to listen to my shows. Depending on how far along you are in your healing journey, it's very important, because I know this material can trigger people. Certain things on TV, before I started my healing journey about 4 years ago, would trigger me, and certain things that would happen would trigger me, or if I was listening to something or just come across some information, it can be triggering. You have to be very careful, and you have to know that you're in a safe enough place that you won't hurt yourself or somebody else, So make sure, it is your discretion. You have to listen at your own discretion. Be very, very careful what you listen to. And all of my topics cover abuse, and so it's obviously a very sensitive subject, and so everyone should listen at their own discretion. Young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, because there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and I don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows, so I think, I'm all about protecting children. And so young people under the age of 18, just have somebody who's an adult, who's older, and can help you make the decision, whether you should be listening to my shows or not. Have them listen to a show with you and see if it's something that you should be listening to, right? So thanks, everybody. I appreciate that. We'll get right into this article. This particular article, I've been looking at it for a couple of days, and, when I found this website, this is www.mentalhelp, H-E-L-P. It's M-E-N-T-A-L, like mental, and help, H-E-L-P.net. And it's kind of all related to mental health stuff, right? There's some great information on this website, all kinds of articles and resources and different information here on mentalhelp.net. And we were looking at some articles from a couple of different people with PhDs. They're doctors, and they, psychotherapists or psychiatrists, right? This particular article is from Alan Schwartz, PhD. Dr. Schwartz's weblog. He posts stuff on this website, mentalhelp.net. And it's an article called "When Children Are Beaten, the Aftermath." And I've been looking at this article for a couple of days, and I really wanted to look at it because it's so important. A lot of people think, as a survivor myself, I get really offended when people think about children who are being beaten as if it, thinking that it's discipline. That just really bothers me, because I hate the word discipline anyway, because I associate it with being beaten, right? Because my family all thought that I needed to be disciplined, right? And so my mom, they would encourage it, especially the older siblings, the ones who were already moved out of the house and had already suffered at the hands of my mom and knew just how powerful she was and how how damaging, her abuse could be, because they were abused too, would encourage her to punish me, right? And because I had a look on my face, or maybe I said something that was maybe for my, out of care, like out of what would they say, inappropriate. And it's when you're a child and you're growing up, you don't need to be beaten. You just need direction. You need someone to help guide you. That's what kids need from their parents. They don't need to be beaten and trashed. You know what I mean? I just think people should know, what happens to children when they're beaten. And this particular article just talks about it, and that's why I wanted to read this. Not very many people actually write articles about what happens to children when they're beaten, but this is the aftermath, when children are beaten, the aftermath. And he wrote this and updated it July the 16th, 2010, so it's relatively current material, so about 6 months old here. And so this is from Alan Schwartz, and I'm just going to read right from the page here. And Alan Schwartz says, the psychoanalyst W.R.D. Fairbairn, Fairbairn, once said, children would rather be sinners in heaven than saints in hell, quote unquote. What he meant was that children believe that their parents are loving and caring people who do no wrong. The child believes that he was bad and deserving of punishment, no matter how harsh. Put simply, the child wants desperately to be loved, even if that means accepting blame for everything. A parent will beat a child, and the child will still say, Mommy or Daddy, I love you, please love me, quote unquote. And as a consequence, abused children report that they provoked their parents into using corporal punishment. When these children become adults, they continue to cling to the myth that they were bad and the parents good. So, this can happen. In my case, I wasn't, I actually never supported my parents on the abuse that they were inflicting on me and on the family. I think the reason being is that I didn't like what I was seeing happening to my siblings. I think had I been an only child, I think that I might have believed this, and I might have felt this way, that I was to blame, and that it was all just me and it was my fault, and that I provoked it or whatever, made my parents have to discipline me that way, which is not discipline, it's abuse. When it hurts and harms a child, it's abuse. And so, but I like what he has to say here, and I think that had I been an only child, that might have been the case, but I was witnessing what was happening to my siblings. I was the youngest of 7. There were 5 children in the home when I grew up, and all ranging in ages from let's see, when I was born, the oldest sibling was 13 in the home, and then the others were older than that. There was 2 others that were older. They already moved out. So the next in age was 11, so 13, 11, and then 9, and then 5, and then myself. So that's the ages of the 5 children that were in the home. So it was me being born, my sister was 5, my other brother was 7 years old, another brother was 11 years old, and then another brother was 13 years old. And then the others were older than that, right? So there were some still younger kids in the home, and I could see what was happening around me as I grew up in this home, and started to become cognitive of what was actually happening, which was a nightmare. And I didn't like to see my siblings suffer, because they were suffering. They were being abused, they were being beaten, they were being called names, they were, being treated badly, right? And I didn't like to see that, right? As a young child, it bothered me to see my brothers being beaten on, and just the aftermath from those beatings, just seeing the sheer destruction of their very beings, it's harsh on other children to see this. And so I didn't like to see that. So obviously I thought, well, they didn't deserve that, I'd think about my brother, I'd be like, my poor brother, and just the way that both my parents were treating all of the children was horrible. And so that's why I kind of had no problem putting the blame where it went, even as a child. Like, I knew that my brothers were not bad. In my mind, my brothers were not bad. They used to do some crazy things, but it's no wonder, because my parents were both crazy and doing the most crazy things themselves, and so they were just doing some crazy stuff too, right? So they were doing some kind of crazy stuff for sure, but I didn't think that it warranted being treated like that, you know what I mean? So something inside of me just knew that was wrong, and I did not sit there and put the blame on myself saying, well, I provoked it or I deserved it, because I knew I sure didn't deserve the beatings that I got. And so even at the worst, if I said something that was out of line, or what could a child do that is just so bad that a child that they deserve to be beaten. There's nothing a child can do that warrants that kind of treatment, right? So that's why, I have a real issue with this stuff, because it's like there's no punishment, that what could you possibly get out of beating on a child that's going to help that child to make a better decision the next time? All you're going to do is teach that kid how to hate. First of all, how to hate themselves, because you're going to make them feel, that parents make their children feel bad, right? It's like they make them feel that there's something wrong with them, and that's why they have to discipline them like that, which is, we're talking, I'm not talking discipline, I'm talking abuse, right? But I'm talking, when parents make it look like, well, they have to treat you like that because you're just so bad. What could you possibly be doing as a child that's that bad? Children need, they need direction. They need the parents to teach them. But my parents were not good teachers. They had no clue how to parent is the big issue. And they had so many children. Like, after 7 children, 3 didn't make it. So there was 10. There would have been 10 children. And like, you'd think after the first few they would have figured out how to parent properly, but that's not the way it went. They actually did a bit better job with the older siblings when their marriage wasn't in such a crisis mode. And then when their marriage became a crisis mode, my mom couldn't function properly. My dad was not functioning ever because he's mentally ill. And so there was, a complete destruction of the family. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's why I'm speaking out and going public, because I want people to know, and I want society to know, and everybody else to know what happens when CPS and DHS leave children in the home where there is serious issues, and they only follow up to a certain point, and then they leave the children in the home, and what happens to them. So that's why I'm going public with my stuff, right? It's very important that people know this. We should have been removed, and my mom begged the courts, like she begged them to leave us in the home. She's like, don't take my children, they're all I have, and because she didn't want to look like a bad mother, right? She had already been brought up on abuse charges with my dad, and here they are looking like 2 idiots, with these kids, abusing their kids. And my mom, of course, wanted to make my dad look bad, so she put all the blame on my dad. My dad put all the blame on my mom. And my mom was like, well, even though my dad was guilty of beating up my brother, and that's why they busted them for child abuse, right? My mom was like, well, don't take my children, we'll get help, we'll do whatever it takes, don't take my children. She should have let us go because she didn't want us, see. She was faking out the courts, right, is what she was doing. She faked out everybody, really, she was, and I don't think she did it because she intentionally thought, hey, I'll beg the courts to keep the kids and then I'll just abuse them the rest of their lives. I don't think that's what she was thinking. I think she, she, in the back of her mind, did not want to be like her mother, who was an abusive woman, who killed her own son, who was responsible for her son's death, my uncle. My grandmother was responsible for his death at the age of, I think he was 18 years old or 17 years old or something. He was my mom was the oldest, and he was the next in line, and she beat him up and made him sleep out in the cold in the wintertime in the barn, and he got pneumonia, and then he got sick and he died. She was ultimately responsible for his death, right? And my grandmother was a horrible woman who beat all of her children, plus some orphans that came to live with her, a handful of orphans. I think there was 7 of them. So there was a whole farmhouse full of kids being beaten and tortured by this horrible woman who I met a couple times and had no love in my heart for. I just could not, and I still don't. I can't acknowledge that she's my grandmother even. She makes me sick. She's gone, long passed away, right? But my mom grew up with this horrible woman, and you'd think that she would have turned it around and thought, man, I don't want to treat my children like this. I love my children. Instead of that, she became her mother and abused us, in every way. My mom was used to being physically beaten on, so that's why she did that to us. She did everything to us that her mother did to her, which was just horrible. And so, it's sad, really. She just passed the cycle of abuse right on. But when she was in the courts pleading the courts to keep us in the home, she probably meant it, and she probably wanted to show the courts, I'm not a bad person, right? She didn't want to be like her mother, but she inevitably couldn't help it and turned into her mother. And man, that's horrible, right? It's horrible to put children through this garbage, and we certainly didn't deserve to be treated like this, and it's absolutely horrible. Some of the kids were beaten more than others. There were a couple of us that were picked on. My brother Rob was one. My dad hated my brother Rob, and he used to tell him, I hate you, you're not my son, and he'd beat him up. And my mom hated me, and so between my brother Rob and myself and my brother Howard, I would say we were the most abused physically in the family. My sister, one of my sisters, and my brother, who was murdered when I was like 8 years old, just turning 8 years old. One of my brothers was murdered. He was 19, and he was I would say my dad physically abused him too, but my mom really loved her son, so he did, he loved my mom very much, and I don't think my mom really was out to get him, but my mom was certainly out to get me. And so there was a couple of us, I would say, even my brother Howard I would throw in there because my mom was quite often beating on him too, and so me and my brother Howard were the two that my mom chose to use as a punching bag, and my dad just kind of picked on everyone except for my sister Kathy. So my sister Kathy kind of was out of it. She was hiding most of the time. She was staying very quiet in the home and very much out of the picture, and she was 5 years older than me, so she was quite often gone and away from the home. So she was, and she did catch the odd beating, and she was called names and everything, but she was not treated like me. She was not beaten on like myself, right? My mom used me for a punching bag for many years, and it's very sad, right? So he says here, this Alan Schwartz, he says that the children, sometimes will accept the blame, right? Because they want to be loved so desperately, that if even if it means accepting blame for everything, and a parent will beat a child, and the child will still say, "Mommy or Daddy, I love you. Please love me." And that's why this, that's what happened to me. I used to tell my mom and dad I loved them when I was little. And after so many years of abuse, I actually started telling them that I hated them. And by the time I was like, for sure 10 years old, I would tell them to their face I hated them, and that, they should just kill me if they were just going to beat on me and treat me wrong. They may as well just kill me because I was already spiritually dead. And and so battered down psychologically, right, that I just didn't care anymore. I was just like, just kill me, get it over with, for God's sakes. And year after year, the abuse just continued. The physical abuse really continued up until I was 17, and my mom and my dad, right up until the last time my dad hit me, I'd say was probably about when I was about 16, just turning 17. So, I was an older teenager, had already been working for a year, and my parents were still thinking it was okay to go ahead and just lash out at me, in whatever way they wanted to. And, of course, because they always had me under their grip and under their power and under their thumb since I was a small child, that's how you control, right? That's how parents control their children, by beating on them. Like, I sort of felt somewhat helpless in the situation. I certainly wouldn't fight back. I never... the only thing I would do is try to get my dad away from my mom, and then I'd end up getting hurt most of the time. And if there was a fight breaking out and my mom was not getting the upper hand of it, then I'd go out there and try to help her out, because I was always taking my mom's side, even though she was my abuser. But it's because I could see that my dad I could see what he was doing to her. You know what I mean? I knew it was completely wrong what he was doing, and he was horrible. He was an absolutely horrible man. And so, I used to go out there and just jump in the middle of it and sometimes get hurt. And then when I got older and got a little bit stronger, around the age of 18, that all stopped, and I actually became really strong in myself. And I thought, what, you people, I was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Like, I'm 18 years old. I can leave. I don't have to take your garbage anymore. So pretty much they had to stop treating me the way that they were my whole life, right? So absolutely horrible. It says here, as a consequence, abused children report that they provoke their parents into using corporal punishment. And when these children become adults, they continue to cling to the myth that they were bad and the parents were good. And that that doesn't necessarily work in my case, because I didn't think that, I was bad and my parents were good. I thought that my parents were extremely bad and that I had some bad behaviors because of them, but I never took the blame on for that. I used to fight to stay in the home. That was the only psychological kind of issue that sort of, I think is very strange, because I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be part of that family. I wanted my mom to love me, and didn't care so much about my dad, but I really wanted my mom to love me. And there was none of that bonding when we were born, and I was born in, very sickly. That's what I was talking about yesterday. And I came in, with Rh disease. My mom had that Rh factor, and so I was dying, and in the womb, and the doctors had to pull me out like about 2.5 months early. So, I hadn't quite even fully developed. I had to go into an incubator, and then my mom was in a coma for the first, 3 weeks when I was born. Didn't even realize I was even alive. And then when I came home, it wasn't like it was a happy thing, because I was the last of 10 children born, 7 that made it and three that didn't. So the last of these 10 children, my mom was just like not wanting this. She was 38 years old when I was born. I was born out of rape. My dad had forced himself on her. She was not supposed to have any children the prior 7 years before, and she had popped out, 1, 2, 3, One, two, three, four, five. It's five. I was number 6. So here's my dad raping my mother, right? And I mean, after your mom, you get old enough and you start understanding what that means. And actually, I saw it. I witnessed it firsthand before the age of 6 years old. I know I was 5. So, yeah. I mean, I saw my dad rape my mom. I mean, he was a bad man. You know what I mean? And he just felt like whatever his needs were, that's the way it went. And my mom had no rights in that home. She had no. That's why she became the abuser mother that she did. You know what I mean? Does it excuse it away? Absolutely not. But at least I can see now what the whole situation was. You know what I mean? I took a big, long, hard look at the whole cycle of what happened there, and I could see what happened. You know what I mean? It doesn't excuse it away. Does it make it right? Absolutely not. My mom had no right to treat me the way she did just because she was abused as a child and because my dad was abusive. You know. But this is what happens. This is what we see out here. I mean, I'm just another case, right? There's so much of this. It's absolute garbage. But behind every case is a human being, a life, you know, a person with feelings, you know, a person with needs and wants, right? And so, you know, it's absolutely horrible what people are doing to each other and do to their children. This hypothetical case study he's got here, Alan Schwartz says, quote unquote, an attractive young woman consulted me for psychotherapy because she felt very depressed. What was striking was that she could not explain any reason for her feelings. She reported that her parents and siblings were wonderful and her childhood uneventful and happy. Closer inspection through the joint venture of psychotherapy revealed a very different picture. What gradually emerged was the picture of an alcoholic and violent family system in which all the children were terrorized by the parents, neither of whom came to the rescue. At first, the patient was angrily defensive of her parents, despite the clear and unambiguous evidence. Clearly, she was not ready to recognize the truth. Only slow and exhausting work whereby we built a mutually trusting relationship in which she felt safe was she able to recognize how intimidating and cruel her parents were. Once this recognition took place, she was on the road to recovery. So this is what Alan Schwartz says here. He says, I have experienced several such cases in which were so convinced of their innate evil that they were sure they were bad seed. This malignant self-concept held despite being able to admit that one or both parents were cruel. Now the belief was that they expressed fear that they must have inherited the genes for evil from their parents, right? So it's horrible that, you know, people take on this role that think I'm just bad seed. Well, when we were little, I mean, I remember my dad actually all the way through life, like he would say stuff like, we're all evil, you know, depending on who he was talking to. If he was talking to me, sometimes he'd say, well, you're evil, you're from the devil, you're the devil's seed, right? Because my dad's he's borderline schizophrenic. I'm just plain old schizophrenic. Somewhere along the road, my mom, you know, and when the social workers, they had to go to court, child abuse they were meant to do some tests, and mom was found to be manic depressive, which is bipolar, and my dad was borderline schizophrenic, right? And so they were told to get help for their mental problems as well as their marital problems as well as their anger management problems. I mean, they were ordered to go to this huge set of counseling. We were also supposed to go to, they were supposed to get help for their domestic violence issues, right? And they were also supposed to get us some help on our own as well as with family situations, like as a team, right? As a family. And it just didn't happen. My parents went to like 2 sessions, and my siblings, because they were there. I was just a baby, so I don't remember those sessions, right? I was about 2 years old. But my siblings actually talk about that. They say, yeah, we went to 2 sessions, and that was it, man. You know, so they didn't follow through with what they were supposed to do. But it's horrible because people, you know, my dad, did I believe that I was evil? Absolutely I did, especially at the age of a teenager, you know, when I was coming into my own and had heard this my whole life, that I was just evil and I was this horrible bad kid. My mom was telling me I was born out of rape and she hated me and was beating on me. My dad was beating on me and telling me I was from the devil, right? And they weren't doing this together at the same time. They would pick their moments, you know. So I was just always being harassed by these 2 evil people, which I felt they were evil. If anybody was evil, it was them. And so, but I used to sort of start to wonder, maybe we're all evil. This sort of stuff went in my mind because it, you know, when you're told that over and over and over from a young age and you can start to really understand what people are saying to you, you start to kind of believe it after a while. You know what I mean? Especially if you hear it year after year after year, which we did. My dad would walk around the house in the middle of the night threatening to kill the family because we were all from the devil and we all had to die and God would be pleased and all of this stuff, right? So my brothers were a lot older than me, and they were doing a lot of drugs and stuff, and I think they had to do drugs just to be able to cope, and could have left in the home, right? But they made a bad choice, and that's just the way it goes. And they don't make a perfect choice every time. Do I run them down into the ground? Absolutely not, because I know without how many children would lose their lives today. We still need them. We just need it fixed. We need a system, right? We still need them, but we need a better system is what we need. But children are falling through the cracks. That's why I came forward. I thought, man, I've got to come forward. I cannot sit in silence anymore. I have to do whatever I can to make enough noise, worldwide and just first of all nationwide, that to draw attention to this. I don't mind being out here in the public eye. I don't mind people. It is uncomfortable for people to know, to know your very most inner. Harsh secrets, these weren't secrets. I would talk to people about this stuff, but, it for the amount that it makes me uncomfortable, I was much more uncomfortable being abused than I am talking about this stuff. And so that's why I thought, hey, I don't mind. I'm going to go and do all I can, to raise awareness, because children do not deserve to be treated this way. And it's absolutely horrible that society just turns a blind eye and wants it all covered up and hidden. And if we all shut up, that's what will happen. That's the only reason why anything's being done at all is because people are shouting out against it. The minute everybody shuts up and just it pretends it's not happening and sweeps it under the carpet as usual, locks it into a closet and throws away the key, then that's when it all just gets to continue on. Because without the human outcry, there's never any change, right? It's very important that people do get involved. We have to do what we have to do. It's very... it's hard on me, you know what I mean? My family was never together as one. We were never functioning properly as a family. So people would say, well, by you going public, did that affect your situation with your family? Not really. My family was never here for me in the first place. They still aren't today. The fact that they don't like what I'm doing doesn't really matter to me, because they've never approved of anything I've ever done, and actually lumped me right along in there with my brothers who committed suicide. One of my brothers hung himself, and one of my other brothers died of a drug overdose at the age of 43 in a shelter up here. That's a few years now, about 16 years. My other brother that killed himself, hung himself. I was 20 years old when he hung himself. He was 33 years old, and at that age, I was doing drugs too, massive amounts of drugs, and I decided at that age, I thought, man, I do not want to go down that road. I know I'm going to end up dead. I'll in the gutter somewhere. I'll end up dead from a drug overdose. I'll end up killing myself. I decided at the age of 21 years old to stop doing drugs and start working on my life. Well, it took me another 21 years to get to the age of 41. And at that point, I was still thinking of committing suicide, and I was still planning my suicides. So this just tells you it's a lifetime of hell. And 4 years ago when I began my healing journey, it was really what really did it for me was and realize that I didn't deserve any of that. None of that was my fault. It was, I was living with abusive people in an abusive home, and it was not my fault. And that I learned to love myself, because I was never going to get that love of my family. I was never going to ever get what I needed from my parents. I was never going to get what I needed from my siblings. Most of my siblings are dead. They're long gone. There's only a few of us left. And the ones that are left are in denial and are very dysfunctional and codependent. So I just, what are you going to do, right? I started to realize that, hey, it's up to me. I have to do this. I'm a dysfunctional family. Obviously, they will never be for me. So I have to do this. Wow. So it's taken me 4 years to learn how to love myself, to learn how to be good to myself and really make some proper choices for myself. You know what I mean? I got off drugs a long time ago. I got off drugs, over 25 years ago or whatever. But I'm talking about just not self-sabotaging myself because of this past abuse stuff. 4 years ago, I decided to stay alive and fight to be well and to have a good life. And so that's, it's so important that people do realize that really it is ultimately up to us as adult survivors. We have to be in charge of our healing journey, and we have to know that we need to love ourselves. We need to know that abuse was not our fault. And so then what do? we have to learn how to heal, right? And it is a journey, I tell you, it really is. But you have to hang in there. It won't happen if you don't. And so every day, you just keep saying, I'm not going to ever give up. I'm not going to ever give up. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to win this fight. And that's what I did. I said, I'm going to win this fight. And I made a deal with myself, and I made a deal with God. And I said, that's it, no more. I'm winning this fight. You know what I mean? So in other words, I'm going to stay alive, and I'm going to have a great life. And that's how I win this fight. Because my parents tried to destroy us, you know. They worked diligently to destroy me and wanted me dead for many years. That's really sad when a parent wants you dead, right? But it's so true that some parents do. And so, you know what? I thought, you know what? It's such a slap in the face to both of them that I'm still living and that I'm actually doing really well. And my mom's long gone, but it doesn't matter because I still feel like it's, hey, too bad. You know, they couldn't kill me, right? So it's awesome. It makes me happy. They killed two of my brothers and they spiritually killed our whole family, but they couldn't kill me. That's my victory, right? So that's why I'm saying just hold in there, do whatever you can, you know, to keep moving, you know, at your own pace, get the help that you need, whatever it is, whether you need, you know, online group support, if you don't trust a counselor or therapist, there's awesome anonymous online group support websites that you can go to. There's, you know, if you're more of a private person, a counselor, therapist, somebody to talk to. If you have to, you call a crisis line. You do whatever you have to do, you know, and you win this fight with me. We're going to win this fight because I tell you what, I've already won it. I already won because I'm not ever going to allow myself to self-injure or to end my life. Like that would have let my parents win totally. My two brothers actually let my parents win. That makes me so sad because it was all because of my parents and what happened to my brothers. And people say, oh, your brothers had choices. They could have made better choices for themselves. Well, if you grew up in the home I grew up in, you would see that they didn't have the skills or the know-how or the mental capabilities to get themselves some help. They were so screwed from the abuse, right? So that's why I'm saying, you know, don't allow anybody to win this fight, but you win this fight. That's what I'm doing. I'm staying here and I'm winning this fight. And I tell you, it's a great feeling to be on this side of it. So whatever you do, just take care of yourselves and make sure if you have to talk to somebody and you can't get a hold of anybody, you phone a crisis line because those people are just like you and me. A lot of them have been abused. They know what it's like. That's why they sit on those crisis lines because they care, right? They really do care. And so, you know, a lot of people say, oh, how could they care? Well, you know, I've had people tell me stuff like that too, you know, gang members and stuff. Oh, yeah, what are you just talking crap out of your mouth? And I'd be like, don't even talk to me about that. You know what I mean? You walk about 10 seconds in my shoes and go through the nightmare that I went through, and then you can talk to me. Until then, you just sit down and shut up because I got something to say. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not fooling around here. This is serious stuff. And, you know, you do deserve to heal. You do deserve to have a good life, right? And I wish that I could have got to my brothers, you know, but it's too bad. They're gone. Never get the chance to heal. But, you know, we have that opportunity, so I think that's why we need to make sure that we do it and be very diligent about it and make a commitment to ourselves, you know. That's what I did. I made a commitment to myself that I would stay here and I would win this fight. So it's a done deal. You know, once I made that commitment, that's it. Because I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm like, okay, that's it. It's done, right? So, but it is a journey. And there's good days and there's some bad days. And through the bad days, it's okay because we have to face it. We have to get through it. And then there's all these good days that come after, and it's like right on. Good days, you know. So everybody take care of yourselves. Have a good day. I'll be back on tonight, both those Dreamcatchers Talk Radio as well, my show. And then I'll be on Wild Survivor to another as well. Same time, same place. Have a great day, everybody. Talk real soon. Bye-bye.